Hello and welcome to the Westcity Church podcast. If you'd like to get to know us more, find us at westcitychurch.com.au. We really hope that you're encouraged by today's message.
Hello. I hate talking. I like talking one-on-one, one-on-two. So this isn't my jam, but I try and say yes to things that challenge me. So here I am. So I'm Kelley. I've been coming here about 10 and a half years. I came as a very pregnant, traumatised and burnt out missionary, and now here I am, and I'm a mum of two. Okay. Oh, what do I have to say in general? Excuse me. So we do communion differently here. It's at the end of the service. The stuff is over here, and there'll be two groups of people who will be handing out the bread and the juice. So if you come up the middle, receive communion and then head back to your seat. If you're not physically able to do that, just pop your hand up as we're coming back through, or get the person next to you to pop their hand up and we can serve you that way. Okay. So, yes, this isn't my thing, but I'm going to do it anyway. I have a lot of imposter syndrome and I'm like, why me? But it's not about me, but I am going to share something about me. So for my whole life, I've been the person that my friends come to talk to about their darkest moments. And as a teen, I carried a lot of sad stories and had my own as well, and had to learn to sit with that darkness or hold that darkness. And I think of myself as an empath. I feel things really deeply, and now I'm a social worker, so that's my jam every day, is sitting in people's discomfort and difficult stories. My last 10 years haven't been easy, and I've had lots of things that I've fought for: my health, my marriage, my sanity, everything. And in that last 10 years, I've had a lot of discomfort and a lot of waiting on God. But I guess that's the kind of Debbie Downer side of it. But I've learnt the hard way that I'm never sitting alone. And sometimes there's no bow to wrap things up in, and some things there'll never be a neat bow to wrap things up in. But I've learnt that God is with us in those times, and we never sit alone. And Jesus' promises is that he's always with us, and a promise that we heard in someone's message a few weeks ago was that he comforts us. So in that space and in that waiting, we're held and we're close to Jesus, the one who also experienced darkness. When we think of the Easter service that Peter ran and the darkness that Jesus had to sit through himself. He knows it, he's experienced it, and he's the closest one to us. He knows it intimately, the darkness, the waiting, the unanswered calls, and he knows us intimately. And he also provides us with community, and I'm really blessed with this community and so many people who I can call on in the darkness to sit with me and to point me to Jesus and sit with Jesus with me. And so communion for me, heaps of Sundays I've come and it's been dark and I've been tired and I've been like, Jesus, where have you been? I know you say you're with me, but for me, I didn't want to cry. Communion is my saving grace of the week. I come desperate sometimes and reach out to Jesus, and he's here, and he's here with you. And if you're going through a hard time or you're going through a great time, he's always here. The table's always here for you to reach out to, and you're not alone. He's with you every moment. That's it.
Always love that song. Why don't you, just grab a seat. And I think my name is Kelley, and I'm part of the team, and I'm going to have a chat today about a couple of the Beatitudes, actually, out of the Sermon on the Mount. And that song is particularly beautiful when you think about all the words for that song. It really is. It's one of those songs that is written by a guy out of real adversity, actually. Lost his very close friend and felt very angry at God. And then after a period of time, he came to this position, which is maybe what Kel was talking about too, this idea that it's not all darkness. It's actually pretty beautiful when you think about the God who came for us and comes for us every day. What I'd love you to do is just have a chat to someone next to you before we start. So if you're new to us, no one is going to look you in the eyes and say, I love you with the love of the Lord. We used to do that at church. Turn to the person next to you, look them in the eye and say, I love you with the love of the Lord. But don't do that. Okay, enough loving. So, we have every year, if you're here for the first time, you are just, well, look, I'm not saying it's because of me. You're so lucky, not because of me. It sounds like, oh, you're so lucky. It's just so lucky you've come to this series. This is my favourite series in the year. We do this every year. Straight out of Easter, we do a series on the Sermon on the Mount. And we take a part of that Sermon on the Mount, which is the most spectacular, I think, sermon in the Bible. It's Matthew 5-7. If you've never read it in detail, I'd love you to read it for the next couple of weeks, like every day. Because we say all the time, let's follow Jesus, right? Because we're not really that interested in following any of us, we're all having a go. But we say that, but then I think to myself, but we have this opportunity to hear what he thinks are the most important things. Because he gave this sermon that was like, here's the things, and I think if you're going to give a really great sermon, and he does it for quite a period of time, you're going to tell all the things that are most important to you. So if you want to know what Jesus really thinks, read the Sermon on the Mount. Don't get distracted by the things that we all are at risk of becoming zealots, right? Where we get hooked up on the thing that matters the most to us. Have you had a few times when you've become like that? Like I have, And I think you need to be careful about becoming a bit of a zealot, about just your position. And one of the greatest ways for me to do that is I go back to reading something, the Sermon on the Mount, and I go, you know what, Jesus, this is what you care about. I may have decided over here that the most important issue is this, but that wasn't the most important issue to you. So I'm prepared to reorientate myself around you rather than ask you to reorientate yourself around me and support my position. So we do the Sermon on the Mount. I think it was a really challenging message because it gave the Jesus way, which was often in conflict with culture even at that time, but it was also in conflict with the leaders, the religious leaders at the time. And yet he spoke up. And I reckon one of the reasons it was so in conflict with the religious leaders is because Jesus put things in such a way that he was trying to put it back in the hands of the people. He wasn't saying you've got to be the most eloquent person, the most powerful person. He was saying, do you know what? Just you as you sit there, Josh, and just, me as I sit there, as Fran, this is the way I want you to hear it. You don't need to hear this through a third party. These are words that you can hear and you can call to live on, you can live out. I mean, I love this little explanation when it says this. This is just a guy's commentary. It says, as he taught the multitudes in their synagogues, upon the highways, along the seashore, and on the hillside of Galilee, Jesus put his truths and ethical principles into concrete popular sayings, contrasting his ideal of life in many simple ways with the conventional notions and practices, and illustrating his teaching from the ordinary avocations, experiences, and environment of his hearers. Entirely free from the scholasticism and intellectualism, he did not teach these subjects in the manner of the ancient or modern schools. He put his ideas in such a way as to make his knowledge universal, and he spoke with a simplicity and insight and a fervour which would appeal to all serious listeners. I love that little bit intellectual way he wrote that, but anyway. He was just trying to say, this is Jesus spoke in a way in the Sermon on the Mount that's for you and for me. It's just, there's a lovely orderliness about it. And this year we kind of take different approaches, but this year what we decided to do is just to focus on the Beatitudes. So sometimes we talk about the other content of the Sermon on the Mount, but you can't do everything. That's why we have to do it every year, because every year we take another little piece of it. So this year we're kind of back to ground zero and back to the Beatitudes. The Beatitudes, if you haven't familiar with them, it's this kind of thing where Jesus keeps saying, you are blessed when. Blessed are you when. So he just keeps saying, these are the kind of things that matter to the kingdom. This is what matters to the kingdom. So you're blessed when you are poor in spirit. Sounds preposterous. But then he goes on to give an explanation about why you're blessed. And let me just say, the blessing doesn't mean things are all fantastic for you. I think he's mainly saying, that's where I am. What you can be confident about is exactly with the poor or with the needy or those who are needing mercy or showing mercy, you will find me right there. That's what is the ultimate blessing. This is what's valued in the kingdom of heaven. These are not supposed to be burdensome things that you are suddenly like, oh, I better be happy when things are really bad. This is not a burden. This is an explanation of whilst you might think this is the worst time of your life, he's saying, no, it's not. You'll find me there. This is not a set of instructions of way you've got to change your behaviour. This is not. This is Jesus saying to us, whilst you think this is the worst time of your life, or this is a really difficult thing to do, I promise you this is where the blessing is. May we never become a church of just trying to become behaviour modification. I'm not interested in behaviour modification. Sometimes I trust that every behaviour I have comes from the core of me. May we always examine the core, and out of that, may these things emerge. I think these are reassurances of grace. They're whispers of grace that shows you how God can be present in the ways of the kingdom that no one else thinks are true, but he says are true. Let me read to you two versions of the Beatitudes. One is from the NIV, and then one I'm going to read from a Glenn Statton paraphrase that we're going to use today. And NIV says, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they'll inherit the earth. And blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. And blessed are the merciful, for they'll be shown mercy. And blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the children of God. And blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. This is not a set of aspirational behaviours. This is a set of whispers of grace, that this is what life really is like. And Glenn Statton says it like this: joyful are those who are poor and humble before God, for theirs is the reign of God. Joyful are those who are deeply saddened to the point of action, for they will be comforted. And joyful are those whose wills are surrendered to God, for they will inherit the earth. And joyful are those who hunger and thirst for restorative justice, for they will be filled. And joyful are those who practice compassion in action, for they will receive God's compassion. Joyful are those who seek God's will in all that they do and all that they are, for they will see God. And joyful are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Joyful are those who suffer because of restorative justice, for theirs is the reign of God. And joyful are you when they criticise, persecute, and slander you because of me. Rejoice, be glad, for your reward is great in God, for the same way they persecuted the prophets before you. So they're a pretty beautiful set of promises, whispers of grace, and the two we're going to look at today. I'd love to throw them up on the screen because I'm going to do two. And these two kind of work as a couplet, okay? They kind of work together, and trust you'll see that. So on one side I've done the NIV, on the other side I've done the paraphrase we're working from. So the NIV says, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. And blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy." Wonder if you can see how these two work together yet, but hopefully you'll see one way of looking at it today. And then Glenn Stanton says, "Joyful are those who hunger and thirst for restorative justice, for they will be filled. And joyful are those who practice compassion in action, for they will receive God's compassion." You know, there's this word, the first word we have there is that word, if we look at the NIV, is the word righteousness. And the word righteousness simply means right standing with God. It's not, it's the fact that we can't do anything to be in right standing with God, the concept of righteousness. It's actually just because Christ gives it to us. It's not by our works, it's not by us giving our best. It's because of the sense of what happened. We celebrated at Easter when a man went to a cross and died and rose again. And it said, look, because of this, you're in right standing with God. It's not complicated. But can I just say, in the way that this is written in these Beatitudes, it's not so much about your right standing. The concept of righteousness there has a sense of others in it. So it's actually about this idea of right standing, not just for you, but right standing for the world. And that's why Stanton has used that idea of restorative justice. Because it's beyond you. You have right standing, but how can you and I be also part of this world that doesn't just worry about my own right standing with God? How can I have a sense of right standing for the world? And that's this concept of restorative justice. Can I say, I'm going to give you a definition of that. Restorative justice refers to an approach to justice, okay, that seeks to repair harm by providing an opportunity for those harmed and those who take responsibility for the harm to communicate about and address their needs in the aftermath of a crime. It's the idea about the person who was the victim, the person who was a perpetrator, getting an opportunity to address that issue. I'm going to go to Cambodia tonight, actually, as part of my work. But one thing I'm going to do, one thing that we do at Westcity, we do it called the Common Purse. And the Common Purse is really an act of restorative justice. It's this sense that we tape up an offering once a year, which will happen in late June. And everything that comes into that offering we give away. It's not part of our church funds. And we give it to local needs, but we also give it to overseas needs. And one place we give it to is Cambodia. The place that we give it to in Cambodia is Prison Fellowship Cambodia. And I have people who have always said to me, why on earth would you give it to prisons? And I always think, that's where the church should give it, where perhaps no one else sees the value. That's maybe we can do our best work when we give it to prisoners who, especially in somewhere like Cambodia, where I can tell you there's no value in their society for the prisoner, the person who's in prison. There's none. There's almost a sense of not just you deserve it, but this will cycle throughout the rest of your life and impact your family. But what we do is we give it, and we give it to prisoners so we can train them in vocational training and in all kinds of personal and skills so they can return to the community at the end of their sentence. But the one other thing that Prison Fellowship does that we don't fund, but it's part of what they do, is they go back to the communities where the person has done harm. And they talk to that community about accepting that person to come back in. And over a series of meetings, they actually then, when the person comes into the community, they actually talk back about how are you going to work together? How's this person going to be accepted? And how can this person actually express their regret for the suffering they've caused? Have you heard about that also in Australia? Because in fact, we're the ones who started this project. I believe it's called the Sycamore Tree Project. And the Sycamore Tree Project is where prisoners, people who have done wrong, face the people they have actually harmed over a series of sessions, of 6 to 10 sessions. And the person who's done the wrong gets a sense of really understanding the suffering they've caused. And the person who has been harmed get a sense of hearing the person who has done the harm and hearing a bit of their story. And between the two of them, they try to make peace. It may not even be the person who's done the direct harm to you that you're meeting with. It's a sense of finding peace that I think this is what Jesus was talking about. How do you bring people back together when such terrible harm has been done? I think we have a unique opportunity to be that in our world. The church has. But so often, let me tell you, I don't think restorative justice looks like that in community. I really don't. I think it looks often very angry. I think it looks very angry. I think it looks like we end up speaking with a vitriol. Both the people who represent the harmed and people who represent the harmer. There ends up being this incredible clash of one-upmanship and anger. And I'm like, that is not restorative justice. It's not the way that I see Jesus doing it. It's not the way I see him. I don't think the scripture when it says you will be filled, you'll be filled with anger and bitterness. The inference is you'll be filled with love and you'll be filled with peace and you'll be filled with grace and you'll be filled with this supernatural capacity that comes because you want to see good things done. I don't see this in what Jesus practiced, which is, of course, ultimately what I care about. One great example for me is the woman caught in adultery. This is, in the modern vernacular, an act of restorative justice. Here's a woman who's been caught in adultery, and the actions of the people are, we're going to stone her, we're going to kill her. And in wanders Jesus. In fact, Jesus has been in the synagogue, and those religious leaders want to catch him out because they want to say he's going to condemn her, and then we're going to catch him out, or he's not going to condemn her, and we're going to catch him out. He's in a no-win situation. Here's the story. It's John 8, 1-11. Let's read it together. So Jesus went across to Mount Olives, but he was soon back in the temple again. And swarms of people came to him, which religious leaders would have been hating, right? And he sat down and he taught them. And the religious scholars and Pharisees led in a woman who'd been caught in the act of adultery. And they stood her in plain sight of everyone and they said, "Teacher, this woman was caught red-handed in the act of adultery. And Moses of the law gives orders to stone such persons. What do you say?" And they were trying to trap him into saying something incriminating so they could bring charges against him. And Jesus abused them and he yelled at them and he decried them that they should be cast into the pit. Oh, actually, he didn't. Jesus bent down and he wrote with his finger in the dirt. And they kept at him, badgering him. I'm sure just trying to actually act like he wasn't representing God at all. And he straightened up and he says, "The sinless one among you go first. You throw the stone." And bending down again, he wrote more in the dirt. And hearing that, they walked away one after another, beginning with the oldest. And the woman was left alone, and Jesus stood up and he spoke to her. "Woman, where are they? Does no one condemn you?" "No one, Master." "Well, neither do I," said Jesus. "Go on your way, and from now on, don't sin." That's an act of incredible restorative justice. And we have all of these theories, we say. What did he write in the dirt? I love the theory that says he just started to write all the sins of the world. Slander, pride, anger. And as everyone saw those words in the dirt, they could see themselves. Isn't it phenomenal that we want to take one part of what Jesus says, but we don't always want to take the whole package? And the whole package is, but you will be persecuted and you will sometimes suffer hardship because of it. But he so often tells us a soft answer turns away wrath. Stand but stand for kindness, stand for strength. Jesus doesn't berate and he doesn't accuse. He doesn't always lecture. He just wrote in the sand, and that was powerful. You know, I don't think it's any coincidence for me that this beatitude is followed, I think, by a description of how we practice restorative justice. It says, "Joy for those who practice compassion in action, for they will receive God's compassion." You know, compassion it literally means to suffer with. Not to suffer together. So when I see someone suffering, it's like, it's not for me to go up and say, you shouldn't be doing this, that person. What about if I suffer together with them? What if I actually feel what they feel? That's what we're called to do, I think. Yeah, this week I got sent this video by a woman, about a woman in Rwanda. One other thing that we support in our Common Purse is Grassroots Rwanda, which is a project I support in Rwanda, where we help women into small businesses. They can provide for themselves and their four families, and they enter what's called self-help groups. And they enter these groups for life because they're so poor that the greatest poverty they have is social. They don't have friends. But in a group of 20, they become the closest of friends, and then they get training and vocational training and all kinds of literacy and numeracy. Then they start tiny, tiny, tiny micro businesses. When I say a business, we think it's a business of, I'll get the corner shop running. This is not the corner shop. Literally, this might be a woman who goes into the field and buys 4 avocados every day and takes them to the market and sells them. But those 4 avocados provide for her for the rest of her day, right? But this week I was given a story about a woman who's going to start one of these groups. And you know what? I don't know about you, but we're going to watch it. It's only 1 minute. I really hope that you feel what I felt when I watched it. Let's just watch that. Take it back to the beginning, Kerry. That's not the beginning.
Kanyaseno Josephine yo mu kagari ka Nkumbure umurenge wa Tare. Nabyaye abana 3. Yitwa Pitoni Mukandayisenga, yitwa Orange igira umugisha. Aya nuko yagiye mu kazi akambwira ngo azaza ariko ntazi. Nuko yantanya abana. N'ubukene kandi ugiye kungwa. Yawe ubuzima ni bukeya. Turya tutishuru, iyo tutayibonye turaryama. Nta n'itungo tugira. Yego. Ntabwo ubundi bushobozi n'ubucyo urebye. Kereka kwatisha. Nta bushobozi bwo kwatisha dufite. Arahari.
Umushinga mugiye gukorana hano, umushinga ugiye kuhakorera ni uwitwa Fox Grove, ugiye kubafasha gushinga ayo matsinda.
Turifuza kuyajyamo uyu munsi wa none. Baturusha byinshi kuko babige bafata utuntu amatungo bundi bakizamura bakagira aho bagera. Natwe turifuza kuyajyaho kugira ngo dutere imbere nk'abandi. Turakomezanya n'abandi intambwe zose turabikora. Turashaka kujya ku itungo tukarya tutavunitse, tukabona icyo kwamba tutavunitse. Tuzajya tuyajya kuyakorera tugabanyeho kuyokurya.
It's just filmed on a little iPhone. But I just thought, I just would hate to be in that situation. Not able to have 3 kids and husband's gone and I've got nothing and I can't feed them and we go to bed hungry. You know, I love what Glenn Satin says though. He says, like, what's compassion in action? Like what comes, and I was thinking about what does it look like, and I think it looks like when you just speak with kindness to someone who's in trouble. Don't you reckon? Do you know, if I see someone who's, just standing at the corner asking for money. You know, and I've seen a lot of women lately in Perth standing at those lights asking for money. I just kind of keep thinking, what situation would I have to be in to have to do that? I can tell you, I'd be beyond desperate because I would have done everything else till I got there. So sometimes people say, oh, well, you know, people shouldn't be asking for money like that. I'm like, I'm not actually here to think about that. A woman recently who's standing at the corner and I pulled up and, you know, I was close. You know, I was waiting to turn right, so I was kind of stuck there. She's standing there, probably 10 metres from me. I look at her and I'm like, I wouldn't want to be you for anyone. How are you feeling right now? So I just wind my window down. I have $5 cash. I put it in her hand. I hold her hand for a few minutes, just for a minute, and just say, I'm so sorry. For whatever reason you're here. I hope life gets better. It's not complicated. You can't solve everything, but I think compassion has some actions that go with it. I think you can listen carefully to people. I think you can listen really carefully, and somehow that makes a difference to people. I think you can encourage people. I think you can help by doing something occasionally. Help with a task. I think you can be happy when someone else is successful. You can enjoy other people's wins, and that's great. And you can accept people. Like we can do all of this stuff, and this, I think, is this like road of compassion. Because I don't think we all know where it takes us. I think it can take us to spectacular ways because we start to change. We don't just feel the thing, I think it takes us all the way back to restorative justice. I think it's like this cycle that you can build into yourself. You know, when I was even in the darkest moments, I love this. This is a golden rule. It's a commonality throughout Christianity, and I love this. It says, it asks you, this is what compassion does, right? It asks you to look into your own heart, discover what gives you pain, and then refuse under any circumstances whatsoever to inflict that pain on someone else. I reckon that's a really great way to think about it. Don't inflict on anyone else. Just spare them. You know, I was one of the, probably the most confronting act of the road of compassion for me was when I was in Rwanda a few years ago. Rwanda, you may remember, had a horrific genocide in 1994. And in that genocide, in the face of 100 days, 1 million people died. So they were dying 100,000 people a day or something, 10,000 people a day, 10,000, by hand-to-hand combat. Not by bombs, but machetes. So there was only 7 million people in the country and 1 million died. And they were not divided because of race and culture. They were just divided because one group had been told they were the powerful and one other group had been told they're less powerful. And let me tell you, those two positions kept shifting with every different form of leadership. So it wasn't one group was always the victim and one group was always the perpetrator. They kept flipping. So when it came to the 1994, one of the groups who'd been the underdogs for quite a period of time decided we're going to rise up. And they massacred their neighbours. So it could have been your friend was living next door to you, had been your friend your whole life, and they became the person who attacked your whole family. So I went to this essentially restorative justice weekend, and I met these two men. Maybe we could just put up their pictures. Patrice and Antoine. And in this crazy, crazy story, may I tell you that Patrice and Antoine had been neighbours and the very best of friends. But during the genocide, Patrice, who was the man on your right, not the man in the white shirt, Patrice is the other man, and Antoine, but Patrice had been part of a group who massacred Antoine's family. He killed 58 of the 60 family members. Only Antoine and one other cousin remained. And then after the genocide, a couple of years later, they went back and they were living next door to each other again because they had done like a public, sorry day. And so they came back, and that had to happen because there were so many people. This was rampant. You couldn't just put everyone in jail. Only the real leaders got long-term jail sentences. They're back living next door to each other. So I came along to this weekend, and I come to hear Patrice and Antoine, who decide they want to tell me their story. And these two men are sitting there like this, crying in each other's arms. And I am like, what the heck? As Antoine tells me that Patrice, it says, and I wrote this, I don't know what to do with Antoine and Patrice's story. They urged me to spread it widely, to tell everyone about the deep friendship they now share, but it's a difficult story, and it's one that our human thinking cannot get its head around, well, mine at least. Because these two men had decided, especially Antoine, I don't want to live like this anymore. I want to actually see you as my friend again. And these two men had become best of friends. They were now back in working in a business together. Their families now were closer to friends and spend all their time together. And as I sat there, and as Patrice is telling, Antoine's sobbing. Well, he's not sobbing. I'm trying to explain it. He wasn't sobbing. He was just tears were running down his face. And I said to him, are you okay? And he said, don't stop the tears. He says, I had a heart of stone, and now I feel again. And these tears remind me that I'm actually human. I was so incredibly moved. I was so moved in everything. And I said by the end of the conversation, I felt slightly traumatised. And I was kind of, is this truly possible? I almost wanted to say to Antoine, you can't do this. It's not human and it's not reasonable. And it's not. It's divine. It's an exchange of grace and love that defies the head and rational thinking. But as the two men throw their arms around each other, I know it's real. It's the most real act of forgiveness and reconciliation I'll ever see. They tell me they're best friends, and I believe them. That they brought their families back together, I believe them. That they'll work together to unite the hearts of their community, and I believe them. It's a different kind of love story, much like the one about a man who hung from a cross. And it reminds me that this kind of grace and forgiveness and compassion is truly possible. To practice restorative justice is to stand alongside those sitting outside the circle and offer hands of kindness and acceptance and a listening ear, but we do not so out of duty or expectation, but because we actually can all understand suffering and we choose to suffer together. Sometimes this comes easy, but sometimes it's difficult, it's seemingly impossible, until we acknowledge that our own brokenness and submit to the Sermon on the Mount. The very words of Jesus that tells us, joyful are those who hunger and thirst for restorative justice, for they will be filled. And joyful are those who practice compassion in action, for they will receive God's compassion. I pray that as a church, we're not just angry, that we don't just see where things should be restored, but that actually we are people who wade into the middle of it. Like we wade in the middle. And we do it in a way that we see and we listen and we hear people and we speak truth. But gosh, we've got a way of kindness. Because I think it looks and sounds really, really different. And I don't say this because I think it's a good idea. I say it because it's the way of Jesus so much when he found himself in those situations. May we always speak truthfully, and we always speak it kindly. Because I think when we put those two things together, we've really got a shot at having the kind of world that we all want. We're going to come to the table. And, I pray wherever you are, I do. I pray if life is absolutely beautiful for you right now, may you thank him. We sang all these songs at the beginning about all is well with my soul, and one thing I've learned is that it's got to be well with my soul whether it's good on the outside or not, because the same God is with me, the very same. If life is tough you can find him here. If life is fabulous, you can find him here. But if life is really ordinary, you still find him here. I just pray that at Westcity, that we never treat the coming to the table lightly, that we always think of it as a full stop on the morning, because this was always what we were about, reaching this part of the service and celebrating the God who's with us. If you're going to serve the communion, can you come up now? I'm just going to pray before I do the call to the sermon. God, I pray. I call to the table, sorry about that. I pray, above all things, that you are with us, that you are within us, that you give us this incredible ability to feel the needs of each other and to actually stand together. And when it's time to suffer together, I pray that we suffer together well. May you help us to outwork this. May it never just become about just feelings. May we be people who act with compassion. I pray, God, that people of Westcity are always looking outward. And in that way, Father, we always experience you. So now, if you'd like to we do this thing called invitation to the table, because in some respect, it's to kind of reorientate us, reset us about what's the table about. This is the table, not of the church, but of the Lord. And it's made ready for those who love God and for those who want to love God more. So come. You have much faith and you have little. You have been here often. You who come for the very first time. You have tried to follow and you have failed. Come, because it's the Lord who invites you. And it's God's will that you should find him here. So come now.
How good was that message? Thank you so much for joining us. Each week at Westcity, we say a benediction together. We do this because we believe that the purpose of the church is to be a caring community for the world, and that as we go and serve others, we enter into Christ's work of welcome, restoration and healing, both for us and others. We believe that in doing so, we get to see and encounter Christ. So let's say the benediction together. We come together as the church to be reminded of the go of Christ. So we will go out and feed the hungry, go out and clothe the naked, go out and fight for justice, go out and end oppression, go out and proclaim anew the old story, go out and associate with those who don't look like us, think like us, act like us, and don't even like us. And we'll do it all in the name of the one who sent us.